New South Wales Labor leader, I am joined with a group of people behind me who are passionate about the issue we're about to speak about. Firstly, Danny and Cynthia Elachi from the Heads Up Alliance, locals from Kingsgrove, and we've also got the Centre for Wellbeing here. Thank you so much for coming as well, and Courtney Houstos as well, Shadow Minister, all to speak about the importance of what we're speaking about today, which is New South Wales Labor's position as we head into the next New South Wales state election. Carla Wilshire here from the Centre for Digital Wellness. That's right?
Digital Wellbeing.
Digital Wellbeing. Today's announcement is that New South Wales Labor, if we form government in March 2023, will restrict mobile phones in New South Wales state government high schools. We're doing this because we think it's important for the wellbeing and educational achievement of our young children. At the end of the day, we need to make sure that we're taking steps so that teachers don't have to navigate and decide whether a student is researching a complicated question in relation to Shakespeare, or simply sending a text message to a mate, or looking at TikTok online. I don't want to be in a situation where Victoria, South Australia and Western Australia are all moving to bans on high school mobile phone usage, but New South Wales students are at a disadvantage because New South Wales is not taking the same step. If you look at international research, it is clear in the UK that there's been an increase of testing results by about 6.7% as a result of banning mobile phones in certain high schools in the UK. That's the equivalent of around 5 extra additional days of schooling per year as a result of this important change. It's important to note for 16-year-olds, the increases were most prevalently felt amongst students who had the most disadvantage. In other words, they had the biggest increase in test results and benefited the most as a result of changes to mobile phone usage in New South Wales high schools. Now, the government has said in response to parent groups, professors, university educators and teachers that the best way of dealing with this complicated problem is in fact to educate young people about mobile phone usage. Now, I think that's a naive approach to this complicated problem. We can't expect young people who lack the maturity and discipline to turn off social media and look at, for example, a math problem when adults in the same situation find it difficult, if not impossible, to do the same thing. Danny, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris. We're thrilled to learn this morning that Chris has put out a statement to say that if his government is elected next year, they will take the initiative to make the policy change that we've been calling for over the last few months. It's a wonderful step forward. We hope, in fact, that the current government looks at that and says we might have to do the same, because we've been pressing them, and this is just a wonderful step forward, and all of our parents are extremely thrilled to have heard the news this morning that Chris is going to move forward on this issue that we think is just a no-brainer issue. Not only is it an advantage for students in the classroom, but during recess and lunchtime, many schools, teachers and principals are telling us that the children no longer socialise, have forgotten the art of talking to their friends side by side. They're texting each other in the same playground rather than interacting socially in that way. So not only is this going to help students academically, we think it's going to be a wonderful step forward for them, re-engaging, playing sport, doing all the great things that children used to do in the playground, rather than have their heads buried in phones, lost in virtual worlds. So well done, Chris, and we encourage the government to at least match what Chris has announced this morning.
Thanks, Danny.
Thank you very much. My name is Carla Wilshire. I'm Director of the Centre for Digital Wellbeing, and I want to congratulate Chris Minns and his team on what is an excellent and comprehensive policy. There are 3 parts to this, and I think each of the 3 parts are equally important. One is limiting mobile phone use in schools. As Chris says, we know what the data says. We know that mobile phone use in schools is having a detrimental effect in terms of students and their results. But we also know that we need to teach children how to properly engage with technology in a digital world. And having a comprehensive program around ethical behaviour online, around data privacy, which is a significant issue. And just to labour that point, for the average 13-year-old, there will be something like 72 million points of data on them out there in the world by the time that they're 13. So, you know, that is a phenomenal amount. And then the third point really being around digital media literacy and understanding the critical skills that they need to be able to engage in an increasingly digital world. Kids are now both existing in the physical world, but they also have a life in the online world, and teaching them how to comprehensively engage with that while also giving them the space they need to be kids and to learn while they're in schools is a fantastic initiative, and Chris Minns should be applauded for the policy. Thank you.
Hi, good morning everyone. My name's Courtney Housos. I'm a Labor Shadow Minister and also a member of the Upper House Education Committee. Well, I can say I'm an enthusiastic supporter of today's announcement. This is about ensuring that our kids can focus. They can focus on learning in the classroom, but they can focus on building those face-to-face relationships and play in the playground. Now, over the last 2.5 years, we've seen our devices and our phones play a crucial role in maintaining those connections, those friendships, but now we have to ensure that our kids make the most of that face-to-face learning time and that face-to-face interaction with their peers. In New South Wales, we have the fastest falling education outcomes in the world, and we need to make sure that we are giving our kids the best opportunity to be maximising that time with their teachers. Our policy will also include a review that will touch on those points that Carla just talked about, to ensure that we have ethical decision making, to ensure that we have best practice when it comes to data privacy, and also to make sure that our kids can establish those critical thinking skills that they need when they are interacting online. I think this policy gets the balance right. We want to make sure that there are exemptions for kids if they need to monitor health conditions or if a teacher has a specific educational purpose. But fundamentally, parents can know that their kids have arrived safely at the school gate, and they can be focused on that learning during the classroom time and that play during their breaks. And it allows teachers to make sure that they can be focused on what they do best, and our kids will only do better when this policy is implemented.
We're all happy to take questions. Tom.
Obviously you can't intervene in private schools, like Knox, but do you think that this sort of legislation will send a message to those private schools that they need to get rid of their phones?
Yeah, I think it's important to note that this measure obviously only applies to New South Wales state government schools, but I think a message in the broader community to educators across the private and the public sector that the state government is taking a stand against obtrusive use of technology in the classroom is a good step forward, whether you're in the public system or you're in the private system. I think that private schools would take note of the measures and the effort that the New South Wales state government would make in relation to high schools, and they'd be prepared to take and make changes if they believed that there was an advantage for going to a state school as a result of these changes. As I said earlier, the results from studies in the UK indicate better testing results for 16-year-olds in schools that didn't have mobile phones within the classroom. So the evidence is in from other jurisdictions around the world. I don't want to see New South Wales kids suffer a disadvantage as a result of not making the change. That's why New South Wales Labor is announcing it this morning.
When it comes to those finer details like Apple Watches and iPads and recess, lunch, how would that work? How would, what are the rules going to be around that?
Yeah, so there's a few things in relation to the specific implementation of the changes. First up, obviously we'll be talking to parent groups and understanding what's happened in other jurisdictions. We'll let schools work out the best way of enacting those restrictions within high schools. It may be the case that some schools demand that phones, for example, be handed in the morning before students get onto the playground. Other schools may have a rule that they are in the school bag and are not allowed to be taken out unless there's a specific and exempted medical purpose as a result. Now, I suspect that will be as a result of whether the rules are being adhered to by the student body or not. If they're not, there are further restrictions that can be put in place by the leadership the educating leadership community. They can make a decision about their specific school. In relation to iWatches, obviously it is going to be difficult for people to watch TikTok videos and also send texts on iWatches. Now, smartwatches are going to be part of school life. They're ubiquitous amongst many teenagers. I don't want to be in a situation where we're letting perfection get in the way of the good here, where we don't take an important step forward in terms of protecting children, their well-being and their educational outcomes, while we work out the best way of dealing with mobile or smart watches on the arms of the student population.
There is an argument to go a step further. You're saying kids are not as good as they used to be at talking to each other during recess and lunchtime. Is that something that you would look at intervening in as well? To have them talk to each other face to face rather than texting each other in the playground during times when they're not actually in the classroom?
Look, I think that would be a natural and expected outgrowth of a policy change like this. If kids don't have mobile phones to play on within recess and lunchtime hours, of course they're going to be more likely to kick a ball at lunch, talk to their friends, establish new friendship groups that are independent of their online life. Heaven knows there's enough online to distract and take kids away from normal upbringing, the normal upbringing, normal social interaction with their peers, the normal experience of going to school. One of the things I've been really concerned about over the last few years is that this is the first generation that has to deal with ubiquitous social media within the school setting. In a sense, they're guinea pigs. They're the first generation to come through. We don't know what the long-term effects of extended social media use will be on this generation. So parents need help, they need guidance. I don't believe you can do it case by case. I think the government's approach of better educational awareness for online work and social media usage is naive, because we can't expect young minds who lack the maturity and discipline to make sensible decisions to do it when many adults are unable to drag themselves away from their social media device. So let's look at the data, see what other states are doing and take a step in the right direction.
Perhaps a question for Danny and Cynthia. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Heads Up Alliance and what you've been pushing for and why?
Sure. Look, the Heads Up Alliance started a couple of years ago now, about a year and a half ago. It was born from a need to support our daughter who had asked for a phone, got her phone, and then got the phone taken away from her. And because we just saw how much it robbed of her time, robbed of her sleep, robbed of her academic focus, all the things that as parents we worry about. So we had to take that hard decision to take it away from her. It caused grief, of course, tears, but we persisted. We thought a few tears today and save a whole bunch of tears later. And then what we thought was we'd have to reach out to her peers, to other parents who are doing the same, so that she doesn't feel so isolated, and so that we don't feel like we're the only mean parents in the school. So that's how we started. We reached out to other parents, we formed a group. So our mission is even broader than just schools. It's just generally delaying mobile phones and social media for as long as possible. We've put an arbitrary date of end of year 8 for anyone who wants to join us, but that's what we're about, because we really strongly have seen we don't have to look at the data, or we don't have to look at the science, we don't have to look at the studies to know as parents that it causes sleeplessness, anxiety, questions of self-worth, takes away from family relationships, all these wonderful things that we want in our lives, and we think it's just a fantastic step to at least be taking those initiatives between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. And we would encourage all parents, of course, to take the steps that we've taken and try to delay even further and beyond the 3 o'clock school bell. Yeah, absolutely. If parents wish to delay social media and smartphones beyond the 3 o'clock school bell, there's a group of parents called the Heads Up Alliance that are welcome, happy to support them, and happy for us to have more parents to lean on as well. Yeah.
Ronnie?
Thank you. Just a question for the Opposition Leader. We heard from the Premier Dominic Perrottet today, who said that this policy is already in place across 70% of public schools in New South Wales. How does this differ from what's already in place?
Yeah, firstly, in relation to that statistic, the government's never released that before. That's certainly incongruous with the enormous amount of parents within the New South Wales community that have signed petitions, spoken to their local members of parliament, spoken to university educators and teachers about their experience in New South Wales high schools. And I'd say to the New South Wales Premier, if those statistics are correct, and in effect this is taking place in 3/4 of schools, take the next step, because parents and teachers are voting with their feet, implementing this ban, and it seems that the New South Wales government are the ones that are dragging their feet. Many schools have already imposed a ban on mobile phones in schools. Victoria, South Australia and Western Australia have done the same thing. Let's not disadvantage New South Wales school kids. Let's make a positive step about mobile phone usage and social media usage in New South Wales public schools.
It's no secret that obviously, parents are supportive of this. We've heard that on local radio this morning. Well, the majority of parents, but how are you going to make sure that this is properly implemented? We've heard stories of children taking their phones into bathrooms, children not putting their phones in the pouches that have been allocated at specific schools. How are you going to get around that sort of issue?
Yeah, it will be obviously difficult in all circumstances to stop 100% of social media use or mobile phone use within school hours, but this is a big step forward, and at least this deals with the major issue when it comes to mobile phone usage, which is a student, for example, taking out a mobile phone in the middle of a class while the teacher is trying to teach something that's important to them, whether it's maths or science or English. At the moment, that teacher has got no ability or way of determining whether the student's using a mobile phone to research a quote from Shakespeare or in fact is sending a text message or looking up a TikTok video. We need to make these things as easy as possible for teachers to get the information across to the student population. And from the student's point of view, I feel sorry for them. I think it's extremely difficult for us as a society to expect them to be dragged away from social media sites, which are designed to keep them on mobile phones as long as possible and instead focus on their schoolwork, whether it's a calculus problem, whether it's a complicated science test, whether it's interesting and important historical research. We're asking them to make that choice when we're giving them the tools to go on social media sites that are designed to keep them on as long as possible.
Carla, can I ask you a question about what the evidence suggests about, the best way for kids to put away their phones? Is it putting it, in a pouch at the start of the day, not having it throughout the entire day, or having it at lunchtime? What does the evidence show us?
Yeah, we probably need a bigger evidence base than we've currently got, but I would suggest that probably the evidence to date would suggest that putting it away right at the beginning of school and then taking it out right at the end of school is probably the right settings. I think on top of that, delaying mobile phones. So I think, one of the problems is parents don't have the guidance at the moment around mobile phones. They don't know when they should be giving a mobile phone or what the evidence suggests around that, and they don't know how to properly prepare, and they're not given enough guidance on how to properly prepare kids for having a mobile phone. So all of those factors need to be part of it.
What are some of the impacts that you're seeing from that research?
Yeah, absolutely. So what do we know? We know that mobile phone usage and social media is having an effect in terms of increased anxiety. It is disruptive to sleep and sleep patterns. We know that it is increasing suicidal ideation. Both Headspace and Origin have done extensive studies and surveys of young people who suggest that mobile phones and social media are one of their primary concerns of young people in terms of their own mental health. So we know it's a significant issue, and we know it's growing, and we know that during the pandemic there was an increased usage in terms of TikTok, social media and online platforms, and we know that contributed to poorer mental health outcomes for young people.
Sorry, one more question for the opposition leader, if possible.
Sure, of course. Go, Rani, I'm here, mate.
Thank you. Do you believe that Tony Burke's letter to the Fair Work Commission was appropriate?
Well, the Commonwealth Minister wrote that letter after the Work and Skills Summit. It had been a long-standing position from the incoming Commonwealth Government in relation to the use of termination of enterprise agreements in order to see wages and conditions go backwards. That's been a long-term concern of both the incoming government and the union movement for a long period of time. He wrote that letter consistent with the views and the positions of the Work and Skills Summit.
Just on a different topic, what do you think about possibly scrapping mask mandates?
We'd be guided by the Chief Health Officer, Kerry Chan, in relation to those changes. We've said in recent weeks that if there are going to be changes to the protocols in relation to COVID, provided they're done in concert with the Chief Health Officer, that's guided the state through a really difficult last 2 years, and I think has the public trust to make changes, we'd be supportive of it. We're not looking to score political points off the back of the COVID-19 pandemic, and we're also cognizant that change needs to occur and take place, and to the extent possible we need to get back to normal, to the pre-COVID-19 conditions. So I'd like to hear from the Chief Health Officer, but we're certainly not against those proposed changes. I'd urge the New South Wales Premier, if he's going to make changes, make them consistent with expert advice and the information from his most senior health bureaucrats. Great, thanks everybody. Oh, sorry, Tom. Go for it.
We're obviously trying to prevent things that are happening like we've seen at Knox Grammar School.
Yeah.
How does that not happen if kids can still access their phones in recess and lunchtime? Should we be guided by the evidence that Carla was talking about, where you just don't have a phone at all? Can you make a more,
Absolutely.
strong stance on that?
That's exactly what we're saying. Restricting mobile phone use throughout the entire school day. It's important both at recess and at lunchtime that they're not in the playgrounds. We'd love to see children interact at playtime away from social media devices, away from mobile devices, actually talking and speaking with one another as we used to do. And these are important rites of passage for young people. I'd have to say that this is the number one issue in my household, getting our kids off social media devices, getting them out of the house, getting them onto bikes and skateboards, seeing them going off and surf or playing organised sport, and away from these ubiquitous social media devices. But as Danny said to me a few months ago, previously when parents made a decision about their personal family set of circumstances, children would often say, but I'll be a social pariah, I'm the only one in our social group. So I think there needs to be guidance from the New South Wales government. We're happy to make this change. I think it's consistent based on expert advice. It's happening in other jurisdictions. It leads to better outcomes for education, better outcomes for society, better outcomes for personal well-being, and I think it's a step in the right direction for our education system.
Would that be written in policy though, the recess and lunchtime from beginning to end of the school day?
It would be written into the policy. That's the big policy change that we're proposing. Now, there are natural exemptions, of course, for those that suffer a medical condition, whether it's low blood pressure or they may have a rhythmic issue with their heart. They need to have that assessed. That's more often than not done on a smartphone or a mobile device. But I think people can expect and understand common sense exemptions to the policy being implemented. The key point here is let's make a change for the vast majority of kids in New South Wales public school, one consistent with the other states. New South Wales Labor leader, I am joined with